Hello, hello. Okay. So, we need to get Eric on here. Sorry, my phone is also my camera. All right. So, this is the first Tomthinkery episode. And, and, it's going to be fun. We're going to cover topics today, education. We're going to be just kind of exploring how this process is going to work and see how to make it fun, how to make it enjoyable, but also effective, how to make it something that's actually, worth doing. That's kind of the goal. Um, Basically, the main thing is we're going to be looking at different topics, and we're going to do this with it's like this. There are many things going on in the world, many things, and in all these things, there are, you know, economic problems, there are social problems, there are geopolitical issues between different nations. There's the onslaught of information and news that we all get, but still, here we are, trying to figure it out. And so I figured it'd be nice if we take a little different approach. If we, instead of going on social media and just talking at people, more ideally, we want to talk together. Just like we did in school, just like you do with your friends, just like any normal relationship. It's just nicer when you can talk with each other. So that's kind of our goal here. Um, think of it this way. We'll take this topic of education right now. That's what we're going to be looking at. And let's see, how can we start this from scratch? How can we look at it as, something which um, something which will be a bit more useful for us in the future than just getting lost in all this. And Eric is here, so let him in. Oh, Eric.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Oh, there. Now we're both here.
Are we officially broadcasting?
We are live. We are live. Welcome.
Okay.
I was just explaining, just for the video and for the whoever's watching. Um, we're going to be starting this Tomthinkery thing. We're going to be going through it with this topic of education first, just because I feel like it's a good place to start. We kind of talked about this earlier. So yeah, maybe we'll just quickly cover like what exactly we're doing and what the plan is, and then we'll kind of dive into it. So yeah, main goal: figure out how to take this onslaught of too much information and everything is AI these days. You don't even know it's real. And let's just think through it together with everybody instead of you know watching a bunch of videos and feeling like we know everything and then just creating more problems. So with education, I was kind of thinking for this topic we could just start with a few questions like what's the purpose of education and like how is the education system handled in different countries or cultures and then like how did it get to where it is and then kind of see where that takes us. What do you think?
I love it. Let's get started.
Cool, cool. All right. Now again, I mean, Eric, you already know, but um, if you're watching this, I want it to be interactive. I want it to be fun. I want it to be something we can like do in a way that is not just us talking to you. So we've set up this Notion page, and yeah, I'll just show it. So here is the Tomthinkery page. If you go to tomthinkery.com, this is what you'll see. And if we go into this, all the topics, um, this is all kind of still being built up, but you'll find all these little tabs here. And when we get to the one which says education with the little pencils, this is what we're going to be working in today. So we'll kind of go through and see, all right, how are we defining education? What's the purpose? All this kind of questions I was just talking about. And if we have time, we might even get into logical fallacies. I just asked some AI to give me a bunch of different logical fallacies, and then we could see where that takes us. But we'll come to that later. So we've got this here, this page to kind of take notes and put all our different links and stuff. And we also have mindmap.so, which basically connects that Notion page, which is right here. And it's in this little side panel. And we can just kind of mind map this out. And then we've got our trusty assistants, ChatGPT and Perplexity, to help. And then we'll just see what the internet says, what AI says, and what we think, and just start thinking this through. So that's kind of how we're going to be operating. Um, yeah. So, Eric, let's try this. Oh, I forgot one other important part. We have this little timer because, I mean, Eric, you know, but like there's this Pomodoro timer. It's like a system of just doing little dedicated chunks. So I thought we'll have like a dedicated chunk, and I set this little 45-minute timer where we're just gonna dive into it. And then once that timer goes off, then we'll take a break and just do something kind of silly and fun, whatever it is, like doodling or whatever. So, are you ready, Eric?
I'm ready. Yes.
All right, three, two, one. Hoi! Cool. The timer has begun. So, let's look at our thing here. How are we defining education? I guess let's just start with that. Like, when you think of education, Eric, what's the first thing that comes into your head of like, what's the point? Like, why are we doing this? Or how are we defining it?
I think education at its best is it's organized way to seek knowledge and ideally seek advanced knowledge or fundamental knowledge, either of those two, because whatever courses I think about in my education and what I got from that is definitely like positive experiences from teachers and community building. But also, like when I went off to go do things on my own, I already had a part of the path started for me. And then that can help me go deeper and help me understand how to cut my own paths forward.
Hmm. Okay. So would you say this is like how you see higher education? Would you apply that same thing to like the fundamentals from scratch
Yeah,
when
I
you're
would.
a kid?
Yeah, I would apply that to kindergarten. I think kindergarten is definitely focused a lot more on like play, but that playing is beginning to focus people into how to think for themselves at its highest level. Like that's what I think education is. It's teaching, giving people a path forward in tools so they can do this on their own.
Okay, so teaching people how to tiki tiki tiki. Is it loud? I should probably get a microphone or something. How to think for themselves and yeah. What if you had to put in like a bullet point? How would you?
Education is about providing people with the tools and fundamentals so that they can learn and create on their own. Or the Tom Thinkery's ASMR section.
Yeah, taka taka taka. All right. So providing people with the tools so they can learn and create on their own. Very good. Um, I think for me, my like initial guess would be something like education is not only about information. It could be like how to think, but it could also be the basics. Like when you're a little kid, you watch your parents, so you learn how to do the basic things you need to do to survive. So, like eating food, like what food do you eat, what food do you not eat? That's like a basic thing that every life is learning from usually either their instincts or if they have a parent or someone to help raise them, then that is where you would learn these like basic fundamental things. So it's like the basics of survival. And in the case of humans, it could be the craft which you learn. So, for example, I noticed when I was in India, there'd be like someone who their whole job is like they have a little stall and they make sugarcane juice and like serve to people. That's like the way they how they do business. So I noticed when I kept going that the dad would have some kids and he would have the kids that they're like, maybe 10, 12 start operating the machine and learning how to do this, how to do business, how to take money, all this kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting because it's not just about um, information, but just like a way to make your way through the world. Because there's a lot of, if you look at higher education or even like some of the classes they teach in school, some of them are more intellectual, but some of them are also more like home ec or something. You're learning practical skills to help you adapt to the world. So if you take something like cursive, we learned cursive in school, but then newer kids are not because it's less relevant. So similarly, I feel like the education should be a preparation for your life. And if we're stuck in like I felt a lot of the things I was learning were not really relevant or helpful for me to do what I needed to do. So that didn't feel like a good use of the time that I have there. But they never bothered covering things like taxes or financial literacy or things like that, which would have been much more useful. So I feel like what I would consider the purpose of education is somewhere in there, including these things.
Yeah, I love that.
Hmm. Okay, let's see what AI would say. Do you want to start with like ChatGPT or Perplexity? What do you
Let's do
think?
perplexity.
Perplexity. If you don't know, Perplexity is this handy dandy little AI, which is known for being less creative and more like looking for accuracy with sources and stuff. So let's see.
Yeah. So while you're looking that up, ChatGTP is a AI conversation model that is its value system is such to where it is okay lying with you as long as it gives an answer. And
Uh-huh.
Perplexity, a different value system where it would rather say it doesn't know, or it would rather give limited information than to give incorrect information to the best that it can. That's why I use Perplexity. If I'm trying to talk through something creative, I'll go to ChatGTP because it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. If I'm trying to find some technical information, I'll go to Perplexity.
Well put, well put. There's some other ones that are really nice, like Claude, and for creative stuff. A lot of people like Gemini too. But okay, so out of 10 sources, this is what it came up with. How would you define education? What's the purpose of it? You can see this on the screen, right, Eric?
I cannot know. I just see us.
Oh, oh, hang on. Just getting the hang of this. All right, how about now?
Perfect.
All right. Oh, wait, not that. This. Can you see this? Perplexity?
Now it's more perfect.
More perfect. Okay. So, how would you define education? What's the purpose? Education is the structured process of acquiring, imparting knowledge, skills, value, belief, habits through teaching, study, and research. The act of instructing others and the act of learning. That's an interesting way to put it. Typically occurring in formal settings like schools and universities. What do you
So
think
it
about
sounds like I think one thing that you and Perplexity have in common is it really puts weight on education outside of the classroom as well as inside the classroom,
that?
and how everything put in this context of developing yourself and getting yourself ready for the world is a part of your education.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I feel that way. Because someone once said this, which resonated with me, which was you don't teach anybody anything, they just choose to learn or not. And
Yeah.
that felt more accurate because, yeah, a lot of people who were like in the role of teacher were not really, they were just sort of regurgitating, but I wasn't really digesting any of it. Whereas I would stay up all the time when I was a kid and just watch the History Channel, Discovery Channel, and I would just be like fully soaking that in. So, yeah, I think it doesn't matter about the classroom or not. In fact, some of the schools I like best, the kids are outside almost all the time and they just use whatever the kid's interested in as they're like walking through the woods to educate, like teach math or history or whatever based on that.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, interesting. Okay, so the purpose extends beyond mere transmission of information. Develop cognitive, emotional, and social skills. This is interesting because you obviously need to know how to like reason and think about things, but you also need emotional maturity, like just as a functional member of society and any social group. I feel like that's an important aspect too.
Yeah.
Hey, that's fun. If I highlight something, I can directly ask a follow up question about it. That's kind of cool. That's new.
So, in this context, would you say that there's a difference between education and parenting?
Mm, I don't know, but I want to make a note of that. Actually, is there a difference? Wow, I really need to spell in education and parenting. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I guess my initial thought would be if I think about parenting, it's like you have this privilege of helping a human being develop to their like full possibilities so that they can go in the world. And I guess in a way education is doing a very similar function. Mm,
I think there's one difference in that if I go to school and I
mm-hmm.
get education from a teacher, I as an adult I may or may not remember that teacher depending how young I am, depending how much impact it had. But parenting is how to prepare this person for life, but it's also a life or not necessarily a lifetime relationship, but it is also based on the relationship between the two people.
Hmm.
So the separation of like what's more important is like just the edge. Like if I go to, I took karate when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I do not know much about that instructor, but I value the time that we had, um, and the attention and quality of his teachings. Um, but I also had an art teacher who was in other ways a very excellent teacher, but we had a much stronger relationship through the teachings. And so parenting seems like for a lot of people to be a highly personalized form of education, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's not just about the preparing somebody, but it's about building that relationship in tandem.
Mm. Yeah. No, I mean that tracks. I guess maybe education it could be considered a little bit like you know how when you like take up a wow, is that dog barking like super audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's let me see if I can fix that because I think that's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to try connecting my headphones and see if it messes everything up. Okay.
Okay.
Now.
Now.
I really like this Darth Vader esque voice modulator you have on. It's nice.
Darth
Darth
Vader.
Vader.
What is
What is
that?
that?
I think it brings out the intensity and intimidation of going to school.
Is it
Is it
sounding
sounding
like
like
Darth
Darth
Vader?
Vader?
You have an echo.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Let
Let
me
me
try and
try and
fix
fix
this.
this.
Oh
Oh
man.
man.
Setting.
Settings.
Okay, how
Okay, how
about
about
now?
now?
Same.
Same
Same
echo.
echo.
Sweet.
Sweet.
I don't think I was listening well before. It's good that you have the echo. Now I have to listen to you twice.
Fair
Fair
enough.
enough.
Um,
Um,
We also still hear the dog.
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
have a
have a
feeling
feeling
what's
what's
happening
happening
is
is
the
the
microphone
microphone
from the
from the
laptop
laptop
is
is
what's
what's
picking up,
picking up,
and then
and
the
then the
audio
audio
is
is
just
just
going
going
into my
into my
headphones
headphones
instead of
instead of
the
the
laptop
laptop
speakers, but
speakers,
it's
but
not
it's not
fixing
fixing
that
that
problem.
problem.
Boo, how
Boo,
do
how
I
do I
fix
fix
this?
this?
Do you want to take a short break?
No. Oh,
Okay,
okay. I
good,
think I
good.
figured it out.
Yay!
Hey, God. How's that?
Better. Thank you. Yeah.
Better?
The echo is gone.
Sweet. Perfect. I am learning new things. Okay. Where were we? Uh, so for education, you were saying like the difference between the parent and the teacher. I was gonna say, I feel like it's a little bit like a apprentice relationship. You know, if you have an apprentice, then in the old school way, I mean, like a craftsman sharing some sort of craft with somebody, you take them on and like they're there to do what you tell them to do for the purpose of them learning the craft. So like you went to a karate class, you have a teacher for an extended period of time. They tell you when you oh hui, hui, yeah. So they'll tell you when you're like ready for the next belt or whatever, or when you've like, okay, you've learned everything I can teach you. The student has become the grasshopper's become the master, whatever it is.
And that did not happen.
That did not happen.
No.
But if you were learning like welding or something, or I don't know, underwater basket weaving, something very specific, you would just be with them until you learned it. And I feel like that's for a lot of human history how like education kind of went. So right now we've got these schools and it's kind of a centralized schooling system. And other parts of the world may have like I think most places have gone to this now, but long back they were having very different kinds of education where they were learning like either within the family or something. So, for example, there could be these castes of people in India who are like they've been merchants for generations and generations, and their kids learn the craft from a very young age of how to be a good merchant, how to um, do business in a very, very like it's in their blood, like they know how to do it. Or similarly, you may learn carpentry from a young age at some like traditional woodworking carpenters in Japan. And because they took that on, it just became a very, very, what to say? Your craftsmanship is not something which could be achieved by starting at 20. It just is not possible, like because they developed it from that age. So those kind of instances, I feel like, are what a teacher is really about. Whereas a parent, I feel like the primary objective of the parent happens in those first like 10 years or so when you really need to give that solid foundation to them, like emotionally, mentally, like helping them develop and grow physically and in every way so that they have the ability, like the faculties to make use of somebody who's teaching them something. So I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking. Let's see, maybe let's start writing some of this ideas down. We can challenge them. Hmm. So education. Parenting. Um, you were saying earlier you thought parenting was like the a more intimate relationship between the two people, right?
Yeah, I would say like it is not just a attempt to get this child ready for life. It's also building a relationship. Um, and I don't mean to say that like that happens in all parenting. But in a general scale, like when you think about what the difference between thinking about like what you disliked about your parents versus what you disliked about your teacher, when I think about what I disliked about my teacher, I don't think, oh, like they weren't good at having a relationship with me. I think about, oh, they weren't good at helping me understand. But when I think about if I were to complain about a parent that I'm making up, it wouldn't be, oh, they didn't help me understand this thing. It would be they didn't have a good relationship with me. They didn't care, or they weren't very effective at that.
Mm. Okay. And so I think on my end, I feel like the education is more more prioritizing yeah, actually I think it's quite aligned with this. It's more about prioritizing the development of the child and less on the like foundational aspects of feeling loved and all that kind of stuff that you would normally get in your early years from parenting. Um, Wishing. Mm, okay. So, do we feel like this, what Perplexity said about this education definition feels like good? Or do you feel like maybe we should keep exploring and seeing if we can find better way?
I'm remembering something you said before, and this was just talking about centralized school, but I think it's very worth bringing up. Where from the perspective of like a government ran school, the point of education shifts to helping people become better civilians, or the kinds of civilians that government wants. And so I think that's
Mm.
an important perspective,
Uh,
which makes it even more mind blowing that they don't teach taxes in the American school system.
mm. So, but where do you feel we should fit that in here?
I, I think I think it's a comparison. So this is a branch of education, or this is a style of education that has pros and cons, but I think it's important to it's important to just put it out there because it's so significant in today's society, where we are society based. The world has largely transferred to society based communications, and so education is now how to prepare you not just for your life, but for being engaged with society.
Mm. So, when it comes to this idea of the government like approach, I feel like maybe this ties us to looking more in like the history and how education has evolved to its current form.
Okay.
Do you think so? I feel like that will
I I
naturally come
think
up.
I think that would naturally come up. We can retouch that there, but I would say it's become so significant it belongs as a sub definition for,
Okay.
and this is for better or worse.
Yeah. Okay. education, right? From a government perspective, would you say education is about creating like productive members of society?
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Um, Actually, I feel like this whole thing goes sometime here. Okay, maybe we can. Yeah, let's go back to this and see where we were at with like the purpose here, as far as perplexity says. Mm. Developing cognitive, emotional, and social skills for personal growth, critical thinking, problem skill. But the funny thing is, if this is the purpose, it doesn't feel like we're hitting that mark, which is interesting. Shape character, nurture moral values, and cultivate a sense of responsibility. Like, what class did you take in school that had any like intentional effort to empower individuals to understand themselves and their role in society?
Creative writing did that for me. My role in society, I think that was talked about a lot in my history courses.
Mm. So, in what way?
So creative writing was an important class for me.
Mm.
It was this ingenious way to just have the teacher allow us to explore ideas. So in the advanced creative writing classes, which I took as many as I could, there was a prompt given, and then you were able to write a short story or a poem given that prompt. And that was probably one of the more significant ways that I could learn about myself, my sense of humor, and learning about myself by learning how to express my thoughts. Uh, History, I
Mm.
had one history teacher was very significant because he wouldn't just talk about what happened, but he would relate it. He would relate World War II propaganda to modern day advertisement, and it
Mm.
helped click in like, hey, like these are the same fundamental things that are happening. They're just popping up instead of getting you to join a war to buy fast food.
Mm.
Um, and then to help put that into scope of like this is what civilians were like 50 years ago, but how has that evolved into today and what's same and what's different.
Mm. So, would you say this had to do with the teacher or with the like syllabus of the class?
uh, i think I think in those cases it was um, I think expressing yourself is definitely a part of the creative writing class explicitly. And I think there
Mm.
were times like understanding yourself in a historical context is also something that could be like heavily implied in a syllabus. I think this conversation gets a little tricky because if you think you're talking to the teachers, they're going to say yes, it's a part of the syllabus. I think if you're talking to the school board, they're like, what did they get on their test results, and that's all we really care about.
Right.
So, but I did not learn from the board. I learned from the teachers.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking is like, for example, if I had, and I did have, teachers that were teaching math, but it was so uninspiring. I didn't understand like why I'm even here doing this, apart from I have to. But I had one teacher who made it fun, made it a game. Like he took
Yeah.
something which was a fairly, for me at the time, like a very boring subject and made it really interesting. And I feel like that had a lot to do with what I got out of the class. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like if you're learning something like geometry, it's still the syllabus, and that itself, or like algebra. If I just think about like basic algebra, that's like a massive shift in like your brain. So learning that one way or another can be massively impactful. Of course, it's much more impactful with a good teacher. But this, because I never took a creative writing class, that's why I'm asking. Uh, do you feel like many different teachers who would teach creative writing would give the same kind of insights and like fulfill that role, or do you think it's more like this is the kind of class it is?
Um, I think my teacher put a lot of weight into allowing you to have self-expression. Like there were definitely topics and jokes and ideas that were not considered like school appropriate. Like don't let the principal walk in while you're doing this bit, but it's really funny and share it with the class.
Yeah.
But I think creative writing, if here's a prompt, create something from that, is something that you're going to learn how to express yourself. Like once you master, not even master, once you start understanding the technique of a language, I think art is a great example of this. If you think of art as a language,
Hmm.
then once you start using that language, there really is very few art options but to understand self-expression.
Mm, that makes sense. Okay. So, did you feel like the creative writing was maybe the only class, or did you feel like other teachers in other classes also helped develop these things?
I would say other classes helped at times.
Mm,
There's always opportunities to express yourself. And then other classes, teachers in the subjects were easier to allow other people to express than some, or some than others. And this was a classroom that was designed for everybody to have an opportunity to express.
mm. Interesting. Okay. So, oops. Um, so what about critical thinking and problem solving, decision making, that kind of stuff? Did you have any class that helped you develop these things?
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking of a class that doesn't. Um, which could mean that if it did not teach critical thinking, that I just didn't pay attention to it very much. Um,
Mm. I feel
so
like
I
I feel like
Yeah.
when I think about these things in school, apart from a few outliers, most of this kind of skill had more to do with the kinds of critical thinking or problem solving you would just take for the test, not like
Yeah,
real world application as much.
yeah.
Does that feel like what you're talking about, or um, does it feel different for you?
Um, I think what I'm saying is if it was just about getting the right test results, if it was just about memorizing for the sake of memorizing, I struggled immensely.
Mm, makes sense. Okay.
I'll talk about an example of a teacher I had who was a wonderful teacher. He was probably one of the better teachers in that school, but it was chemistry. And I was so bad at chemistry. And I remember having to like memorize the periodic table and these different kind of bonds. And it was not clicking of why this was so. And I felt like at a certain point they were like, you're just going to have to memorize these and they will make sense later. And that was an example of like that makes sense in some way in the way he was teaching it, because chemistry is not an intuitive thing and you have to understand it. You have to understand the mechanics of it before you can explain why things are happening.
Mm,
Um, and there just happens to be a lot of things on those periodic tables, a lot of different kind of ways for those things to interact. And I suffered through chemistry. I went back and took it a second time, and I suffered through it again. And I just had the hardest time.
uh, but did you eventually learn like critical thinking from that?
Um, no, I couldn't, because I couldn't understand what I was talking about. Like in the same way, I was taking pre-calc, and in that pre-calc, we were memorizing formulas, but we weren't understanding why they were correct or how we got to those equations in the first place. And at that point, it
Mm,
felt like all I'm doing is memorize formula and I'm not actually using it. And in those classes, no critical thinking was ever used. It was just memorization.
mm, yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Where other students did very well in those classes, and they learned a lot of critical thinking skills because they came from other backgrounds where they understood things, so they picked up on it faster than I did.
mm. Do you feel like with education, so like the way it's structured right now, at least this modern education that we had, everybody's going through all of these classes, and I feel there's some assumption of everyone starting at the same place, when in reality, because of whatever you picked up from your parents or genetically, for example, it's like physical things or whatever, your cognitive ability, your understanding of historical stuff, or any experiences you've had. Based on that, I feel like we're all starting in different places for each class, for each different type of topic. So
Right.
it feels like, for example, I also took chemistry and I also struggled in chemistry. But in that class, I remember this kid sitting behind me who was like, I think he's from Colorado. And he was like straight up lived in like the hood back where he was from. So I learned about the Crips and the Bloods and like this kind of stuff far more than I learned anything about chemistry. And I remember he like copied all my tests because he sat behind me. And one time he got like a better score than I did after copying me, and I was like, "What?" So I went and showed, like, "Hey, he put this and you wrote it right, and I put the same answer you wrote wrong. Like, why?" And then he fixed my test and gave it back.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
but but yeah, I think from different people that were in the classes, I would learn like these social skills or emotional things, but I don't remember that being something that in any way the school fostered. And in many ways, I struggled because like shifting schools or whatever, it, most of those kind of lessons came in a very hard way, especially because kids can be kind of mean. So I don't know. I feel like we could do much better on that, at least the schools I was in. Mm. The same with like shaping character and moral values or this like sense of responsibility. Like when I was in third grade, some kid accused me of spitting in his eye, and that meant I gave him pink eye, which is not possible. Like you need poop particles. So I I don't I don't know. After that, and I had to go into detention and all this, I did not feel particularly like the school, like the people in the school were really had some like strong integrity. And like another
No, I
example,
know. Yeah.
go ahead.
No, so I grew up in a really like when you think about 90s movies in
Hmm.
high school, there's always like the preppy kid. And a part of being a preppy kid is you are better than the other like groups.
Oh,
And
right.
that was really that stereotype was a very real thing that was like what we went through. And I was not a part of the preppy group. We were in the um, I was not I did not get into a lot of trouble. I don't think I even have the honor of saying I went to detention in high school, but I hung out with all those kids who had detention high scores, and they were
Mm.
doing very well in their detention marks. So when it came to
Detention
interacting
marks.
with teachers, there were some teachers that just you could tell leaned towards a personality type and treated them differently. There was a one time I took advanced English, um, and everybody was so nice. All these preppy kids were so kind, and they were just like, "Well, the sentence you're writing here is very passive. You need to write it with a lot more action oriented, and not just like I feel." It needs to be like, "No, this is how the world is," and be ready to be criticized for your opinion. And then that was very helpful. And then the teacher would be talking about a book we were reading and how her other class, her non-advanced class, those kids just don't want to do anything, and how they just don't want
Mm.
to try. And she so much prefers teaching this class. And I took pause to that because I was like, those are my friends. I feel like that's a weird thing to say. And then I go to lunch, and all my friends are talking about English classes, and I'm not kidding you. They would be like, they don't push us, they don't try, they don't ask us anything. And
Mm.
so this teacher was like, why aren't these kids like trying? They don't want to try. I'd be like, no, 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 you just don't know how to talk to them, and you don't know how to encourage them. And maybe they need different kinds of communication. Maybe there is a reason for it being different class, but these are very smart people who are just very distracted and need help.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I remember being in third grade and the class went up to take a bathroom break, so they took us to the bathroom and I just distinctly remember the teacher saying we were the worst class like ever.
I heard about that. You were, yeah, that
Yeah,
made
yeah.
news.
We made the rounds. No, but like the worst, and not only were we the worst, but um, because of that, because somebody wrote something on the bathroom stall or something, we had to like go in one by one to the bathroom so they could like make sure nobody was writing on the walls or whatever. But I remember this theme like multiple times throughout my life. People would say we were the worst class, like just as a thing for teachers to say for some. I don't know if they're trying to make us feel bad or like what, but that's kind of the approach they took. I don't remember this being particularly effective nor inspiring in any way. But hey, our timer went off, our 45-minute timer. So
Okay.
let's take a break and uh, do you need the bathroom or anything?
I'm going to make a coffee if I have that time.
Oh, okay. Up to you.
Okay.
So maybe
But
like,
what's this game? Let's talk about that.
what's the what?
What's this game? What are we playing?
Oh, so I mean, I'm just having fun. Like I could have just keep going for much longer, but I figured um, I learned this thing from Justin Sung, and basically what he was saying was the brain resets in a really nice way by doodling repeating patterns and like just something where you're not
Oh,
trying to draw anything, you're just doodling. So whenever like he teaches mostly people that are studying for academics and stuff. So sometimes your brain just gets like overwhelmed trying to process new information. But for him, he was saying like uh, if you go and just do this kind of doodle drawing for just like 5 minutes or something, it really just takes your brain out of that like overwhelmed kind of mode. But I found it to be really fun just to like doodle. So I thought
okay.
maybe we could go on this on here, and maybe I'll just see if I can. All right, link. All right. Uh, how do I send this to you? Okay, there. Now I'm not sharing my screen. I'll email this to you. Did you get the thingy?
Is this over
So it's
phone
the
or
no, I just emailed it to you. It's the you remember that mind map IO thing?
yes? There, I'm ready. I got it.
Cool. So adolescent eagle, nice. So maybe we'll just kind of doodle a bit and see what happens. Don't like worry too much about doing some drawing in particular, just like doodle stuff. Oh, let me set a 5 minute timer. One sec. Okay. Very interesting to do this with a computer trackpad.
Yeah, I'm using the same.
I need to figure out how to have some like nice background music, I think.
What kind of music would you play?
I don't know, some good doodling music. Gotta be something that I can actually do on YouTube without getting some copyright issue. All right, 5 minutes.
It's beautiful.
Wow, look at that. Oops. Da-da-da. I did not mean to give this like bloody nose thing.
Now it's a part of it now.
I know you won't even let me move this thing. Oh wait. I think I hear masked robber guy is like eating education.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we got some kind of dinosaur melting these blue holes inside of the
I
box.
thought
The
you were
guy's
drawing a mountainscape, so I wanted a dragon setting it on fire,
nice.
and because I
Um,
thought that's, and I'm a big fan of Strong Bad, so it was inspired by Trogdor.
nice. I like this guy's knobby knees. Why is he like sweating or is he sad?
Well, he's holding up the mountains. It's a lot of work, and he wants a break.
That is. And he's definitely got like this posture that's not very sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. He's not. He's he needs some doodle time.
I once had to like help somebody put up drywall on the ceiling, and I just had to like hold it while they went around and put all the screws in. And my God, that's
Right.
some of the hardest work. Well, I think we deviated a little bit from the like objective, but I think this turned out very nicely.
I uh, might not have been listening.
That's okay. That's what I get for having artists. No problem. Okay, so uh, shall we give it another go?
um, let me take a 2 minute break, and I will be right
Okay.
back.
All right. In the meantime, let's think about this. Develop cognitive, emotional, and social skills necessary for personal growth. I mean, that definitely feels like a good purpose. So foster critical thinking, prepare individuals to become productive members of society. So why social progress? Why economic development? Oh, mm, website, the source, local media, Wikimedia, education. I do like this. We'll see if I'll do it when he comes back. What? Academic rigor, discipline. Mhm. All right. I asked, do different cultures around the world feel the same about this? Meaning the uh, definition and purpose of education.
Hello.
Hey, you back?
I am.
Great. So I went back to Perplexity and I asked if different cultures around the world feel the same way about this, referring to the definition of
Oh, really?
education and purpose. So I thought that was interesting. I'll go ahead and start our 45-minute timer. There we go. Um, so different cultures around the world do not feel the same way. I mean, you could kind of expect that. 8 billion people feel different. Um, some are focusing more on academic rigor and discipline, while others focus on creativity, which of course will affect the classroom. Um, so in Finland, students receive frequent breaks to balance learning and leisure, promoting student retention. Does that mean retention of like their attention? Probably, right? Like how much they can
Hmm.
absorb.
Yeah.
If I think about my wife's education in India, it was like, how much can you by heart everything for the test without any real depth of comprehension? Um, and a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff she just quickly, once the test was over, it just gone out of her head.
Yeah. That's fair.
Japan, strict uniforms and rules reflect on a focus of discipline and uniformity. So in Japan, they want everyone to be uniform, which I feel, I don't know. I think, where was I reading this? Maybe it was Finland or another one of those like Nordic countries. They were they weren't even testing for anything academically until the kids were about 16. because they went this totally different route of very like hands-on and creative kind of based. And still, by the time they started testing, the kids were reaching very high scores, like similar to the levels that you saw in like I think like South Korea or China or one of these kind of places where they're much more strict. I found that interesting.
That does sound interesting. So it's almost as if torturing kids through unnecessary amounts of cram studying is unnecessary.
I mean, when you define it as unnecessary in the beginning, yeah, I guess so. But I don't know, like at the end of the day, most kids want to like go play, right? So there are some things we do need to have children do, not because it's fun, but because it's just what they need to do. So where's that line? I guess that's the question,
That's a great question to write down. I would I would love to explore that.
right? Optimal line between discipline. Conversely, impact range. Okay, that's done. Um, so this is saying educational priorities vary between advanced and emerging economies. Advanced economies tend to emphasize creative and independent thinking more than emerging economies, where basic academic skills and discipline may be prioritized. Even within countries, political and generational differences influence educational preferences. So, I mean, when they say educational preferences, are they talking about like the preferences of the um, institutions or preferences of like, I don't know, the culture
I
itself?
think yeah, I think I think American education system is about to shift radically with our um, man. It feels so much longer ago, but it was really within the past 6 months. Our federal education services has just been cut down drastically, and I think that was more of a political decision than it was a pragmatic decision, um, a pragmatic dealing with education. And so I think it's more in line with outside influences than it is with anything else.
Mm. Well, Facts. So this first part about advanced economies tending to emphasize creative or independent thinking, would you consider, for example, would you consider places like Japan, South Korea, or China as advanced or emerging?
I don't feel like I know enough about this, but I would my gut says they are already advanced.
That's what I was
Like I don't
thinking
know the
too.
metrics of this. Yeah,
But I have noticed, so uh, Isha has those like multiple types of schools and that they run. And I've noticed they did it by based on like what made sense for the type of kids that are coming. Like one school may have been focused more on like first time, first generation school going kind of kids. So they focused a bit more on like English so that they could interact with the rest of the world and computer skills, like how to use the internet and stuff, along with their basic education, so that these kids would be able to like take whatever entrance exam tests and would be able to like actually get out of poverty and get out of the socioeconomic situation they're in. Whereas other schools are more focused on like um, middle class kind of kids would have, have more money and they don't need to get out of poverty. So their goals were different and the curriculum was different. I can see in that sense, but it's hard when you have like so if you look at the US education system, we've got this um uh you know, trying to make a school system that works for everybody across the country. But obviously we're not delivering the same quality of education. And even if we were, so many people in different areas are just in different places. Like
right.
when I moved from Ohio to Texas in fourth grade, I was kind of already ahead from Ohio education. I was like almost a year ahead of where they were at in Texas. But at the same time, the school in Texas was far better. Like in terms of there were carpeted floors, there were most of the teachers had an assistant teacher. There was like smaller class size, a nicer school, like this. But where they were at in terms of the curriculum was behind. And then when I went to Georgia, the test I had taken in eighth grade to like graduate high school, they were only just getting to it in like what, junior, so 11th grade. It's just kind of blew my mind. But we're definitely like in different places across the country. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that a part of that is there's a standardized score that everybody has to meet, and a part of that is to continue to accept funding, um, and then that is something that is not. I don't think that that's totally consistent, but I think it's more consistent. What I think is less consistent is individual schools can change how they grade to affect their scores, and so some schools will then uh, change the difficulty of the education or the testing in order to keep funding consistent. I'd love an expert to come check me on that because that's something that I've heard from teachers but haven't actually studied myself.
Mm. Okay, so that's one thing, funding for schools.
Yeah,
And you, in a way, maybe this is a too harsh a way to put it, but it's kind of like in that scenario, you're like cooking the books, so to speak, to get the outcome you need financially. right?
Yep.
Mm. Okay, well,
But it's like not changing the test scores of children. It's changing what would be an acceptable answer at that level.
uh, sure. I mean, you're making the test easier, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But like, if I'm in fourth grade, I don't know, English or math or whatever in one school, and you're in fourth grade, the same class, but just in a different school in a different part of the country, we both take it, but my school has kind of made the answers easier, and I get an A, and yours is a little bit more hard, so you get a B. It looks like I did better when actually you might still be at a higher level of
Yep.
comprehension. Okay, well, if we look at these uh, things like this purpose of education, if we have to shape, okay, so then one question is this a form of just giving people the same chance to succeed, some kind of equity thing, or is it not really doing any favors at all to the kids because things were made so easy that now kids from all these different schools are now going to a university, for example, and they're in vastly different places because their uh, system like made it easier or more difficult.
Um, I think in America, bureaucracy becomes the goal of the conversation instead of a tool to make the system better. And what I mean by that is, like, in education, what you want to do is something close to, okay, what does this area need? What are we lacking? And then what would be something new we could do to also like progress education in our area and generally. But when it comes to funding, and then now you must meet certain standards and certain requirements, um, maybe you're a principal and to no fault of your own, like the situation is such to where a lot of your kids are distracted because their home life is more distracting or more difficult. Um, Now you're, after several generations of that, like we've been through, the game is no longer how do we teach, but how do we play the system. And now we're just buying into this abstract system instead of buying into the education. And I think that's the feedback loop that a lot of education is stuck in right now.
Mm, yeah. Okay. Mm, well,
Do you feel like that touches on what you were talking about, or did I go off course?
uh, no, I mean, what you're saying makes sense for sure. I'm just seeing like if if we're trying to tie this back in, where do I want to take it? I, I'm thinking, I'm thinking, let's try and take this back to the the beginning where we were looking at the questions. So let me shift it. So over here on the um, perplexity, I was asking like, do cultures feel the same way? So I'm wondering, I'm wondering maybe if we start looking at now there's clear differences between like different countries and cultures. So maybe let's see how well, based on these kind of, if this is what we're going off of for now, just as like the education definition and the purpose, how well do different school systems, like comparing the US with other countries, how well do these school systems like score for meeting that goal right now?
Hmm.
I want to try and find some kind of metric, some way to look at this. So, okay, let's say, let's see what it comes up with. Ooh, so many sources. So far, 20 of them. By the way, Eric, have you used the uh like ChatGPT kind of audio interface?
No, no.
Oh man, it's getting really good. I just helped my mom use it for something, and we it's like the advanced audio model. She has the $20 a month plan, whatever that one is. But
Hmm.
when you turn on this thing, the chat kind of goes away and there's like this little circle and you're talking to the circle, but
Yeah.
everything is there on the chat. So you can like reference it later. And it only gives you like maybe 15 minutes a day of usage for that plan. But it's really good. Like the vocal intonations are excellent. The what to say, the comprehension and like ability to um, interact with you for more sophisticated things and keeping the train of thought going, it's quite good. It makes it much
I,
faster to interact.
yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these programs affect education in the future.
Mm. Hey, wow. Okay. Are you seeing this on the
Yeah.
screen? So it's the global education rankings. It's giving South Korea top. I'm kind of surprised the US is ranked out of 10. Like, based on what? Global Citizen Solutions, World Population Review, Shiksha. What is Shiksha? So, key strengths and cultural features. South Korea, academic rigor, STEM excellence, high college enrollment, strong societal value on education. Okay. What makes the US great? High education, research excellence, and diverse and innovative approaches. So,
I
do you think this
yeah,
is referring to like university more than uh, primary and
I
like,
suspect it does. Could you do me a favor? Could you ask it to rank the same countries by literacy?
ooh, okay. Scores based on- High stakes testing for East Asian countries. Nordic countries prioritize student well-being, inclusivity, and holistic development. Having just gone to Amsterdam, which is not listed here, but I mean, it's still up there. And man, everyone is so chill. I really enjoyed the general vibe in that place. Okay, what do we got? Literacy rates. Finland, Norway, 100%. UK, Netherlands, Denmark, Australia. Wow, where's the US? Functional literacy is lower. What does that mean?
What does the 99 mean? Because that I don't think that is that 99% of the population can read.
Well, I guess so. Maybe let's try one of these.
But our functional literacy is that does that mean that like we can read but we don't know how?
Mm, I'm thinking it's more like, well, let's just ask. Display the percent of adults 15 and above who can both read and write with understanding a short, simple statement about their everyday life. Many countries, particularly North America and Western Europe, utilize a more stringent definition of literacy, including the United States. Da, 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 da. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. So let's see if we can figure out what this functional literacy. So 21% of adults in the US have low literacy rates. Over half the people in the US read below the sixth grade level, and a fifth read below the third grade level. That's not promising.
Yeah. So how is that possible and we have top education? Does that mean that we have the resources but we're not utilizing them, or is that just saying that in the of the best schools in the world, we have some of the best schools in the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could just be that the education system for higher education is like really top notch, but as a whole, just like how you've got income inequality of like education inequality. So the people in the lower
Education,
brackets,
is that a phrase?
I don't know. I would like it to be.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Would, well, doing another deep dive. Education inequality among high performing countries. Oh, okay. So here's exactly what you were just talking about. So the US has some of the world's top universities and high overall literacy, but also deep educational inequality. The funding is variable and tied to local property taxes. I wonder why the schools decided to link property taxes to public school funding. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds are less likely to access coursework or attend high performing schools. So South Korea, renowned for academic excellence, but educational inequality is also a major concern. The heavy reliance on private tutoring. Hagwons? Is that really a word? Hagwons? Hmm. So if you can afford the tutors, then great, your kid can, move ahead. But if you're poor, good luck. UK, what is a persistent attainment gap? Hmm. Oh well. France's educational system is among the most unequal in the developed world. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially in poorer regions like Tien Saint Denis, face under-resourced schools, teacher shortages, and lower educational outcomes. Students from privileged backgrounds far more likely to attend prestigious schools, perpetuating cycles of social inequality. Finland, on the other hand, is often cited as a model for educational equity, with policies aimed at ensuring equal opportunities for all students. However, challenges remain, including a gender gap in achievement, difficulties faced by immigrant students, and disparities linked to budget cuts and special education shortages. But they keep trying to do stuff. Mm, interesting. So basically, not just here in most of these places, there's like a huge difference in the kind of education you get based off whatever factors, whether it's South Korea having the tutors or France having the like rich people tend to have their kids go to the nicer schools, which then keeps perpetuating. And in the US, we have our property tax system, which means that the schools with the rich people have more money to get better teachers and so on.
Yeah, or more supplies, or more extracurricular activities, um, more support in sports, better laboratories, better
Yeah.
counseling.
Or even like field trips. I remember in high school, I got to go to a water treatment plant, and I thought that was actually really cool. Like I saw where they were treating the water, which is actually, I think, a lot of Atlanta's water from Lake Lanier.
Well,
But yeah. Well, let's let's see. What other questions? Do you want to go through like the difference between education and parenting, or history of education, like how it got to where we are?
let's do
What
history of
seemed,
education. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
I do have one question for you because this
Mm,
seems pretty casual. So I feel okay asking the timer for how much time we have left. Are you able to
hmm.
move that to another corner of the screen?
Yeah, where do you want it?
Um, I would say in the
There.
top right. So there's something telling us our viewership, and it was covering our
Oh,
countdown timer.
okay.
So
How's this?
I can see it great. Yeah. Or actually, let's maybe try the bottom right. I feel like that might be a less distracting.
Boom.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So, okay. Optimal range. Oh, sorry. History of how education evolved in its current state. Let's go to here. All right. The evolution of education is a story of adaptation to the changing needs, values, and structures of societies across history. Here's an overview. Ancient civilizations, earliest schools, formal education began in ancient Egypt's Middle Kingdom. Interesting. So that's like what, 2000 BC-ish?
Yeah.
Wow. So they trained scribes and officials. Ancient India and China, Vedic and Buddhist systems in India, and early state-run schools in China. Interesting. Okay, so when would this have been? Because Gautama the Buddha was like 3,500 years ago, so somewhere more recent than that. Okay. Ancient Greece and Rome, formal education for citizens, emphasizing philosophy, math, and art. Rome later developed its own schools, initially private, then increasingly public. Greece and Rome are kind of interesting. Because I remember in art class, my teacher was explaining how, like, if you look at Greek and Roman art, it often looks very similar, but uh, for example, the Roman statues of people always had the facial proportions wrong because they were just trying to mimic what Greece had created, but they didn't understand the like spacing of the eyes and the face and all the proportions.
Yeah, that was back in time where you would have painters study cadavers, and they would
Oh, like
dissect
Da Vinci.
cadavers. Yeah,
Mm.
uh, yeah. Even today, they there's a illustrators will sometimes go through this arduous exercise of sculpting a human body, but they'll sculpt it from the skeleton and then each individual muscle and organs. So they'll from inner out. So by the time they're finished, they have just something that looks like a person, but they've also sculpted and placed in all the individual muscles and organs and things like this. And they say one sculpture like that is worth 1,000 pictures because you understand so much more of what's going on inside the body.
Yeah, sounds very hands-on. Mm. All right. So in the Middle Ages, monasteries became the centers of learning. They became, religious. Interesting. And that would have been 1088 is 900 years before I was born. That's when Bologna, Bologna. Paris was later. In the 7th century, Islamic civilizations established schools, madrasas, initially in mosques, later as separate things, spreading literacy and scholarship across the vast region.
Can you imagine like being the father in your area whose son is trying to go to higher education and your son's trying to explain it to you and they're like, I don't know what any of that means or why you would do that. And the answer is, well, we don't know yet. So that's why I'm going so we can learn about these things. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You're saying you're so smart you have to go to a different school to learn things. It's like, yes. Like that must have just like been the most difficult concept.
I don't know. Maybe if you put it in context of the time, because what was the literacy rate at that time? And were there even books at that point, actually?
Right.
And then I feel like a lot of people back then it would have been more common to have like a master and apprentice and far less socioeconomic mobility. So if you get educated or apprentice under somebody who's like has a craft or a skill, that was a doorway to vastly change your child's life. So I feel like they would have thought of it differently.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think books were definitely around, but the printing press was not yet, so they were not in mass.
Oh yeah, yeah, they had like scrolls and papyrus and whatever. Okay, that makes sense. That would have made everything like all the more, you know, precious and valuable and probably kept for just the most, like that would have been like a luxury to be able to have a book.
Yeah,
Mm. So all the way back Middle Ages, that was going on. Renaissance and Enlightenment, so the 14th through the 18th century, that time period. Um, a revival of classical learning of humanism. I wonder how they're thinking of humanism.
humanism, I think, is a philosophy. An intellectual and cultural movement emerged during the Renaissance, centered around the study and appreciation of classical antiquity, particularly Greek and Roman literature, philosophy, and art.
Mm,
Core ideas and importance of dignity and potential of individual and a human being,
interesting. Okay.
which which was, I think, a part of this upsurge in education because it's looking at somebody not as they are now, not in their class or capabilities, but what is their highest form of themselves? What is their purest form of their nature? I
Mm,
think that time period was very much so about like what is the nature of things, what's the purpose of things, and then what's the idealism of that to help us define it.
mm. Okay, that tracks. Okay, so at this point, we're starting to see like possibility in people more than just a potential slave or a potential like what do you call sharecropper, whatever they would have had back then. Then the Industrial Revolution after the Enlightenment. So now we need literate, disciplined workforce, uh, which would lead to the rise of standardized mass education systems in Western countries. Okay, so basically 18th, 19th century, which is what, 1700s to 1800s, we need people to not be farmers anymore and to be able to like somehow function together in a factory or whatever they're doing. And then by the 1800s to the 1900s, we shifted to compulsory education. So now kids have to go to school. Do you think that the social, like when this government is saying, "Hey, now kids have to go to school," do you think that the people were fighting it in the same way that we may now be fighting, uh, I don't know, like the mandates during school or any other like if you tried to make anything a mandate these days, I feel like you have so much resistance. I'm curious if they fought it back then.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good question. I think generally people seem to be resistant to change, and see it as control. And but I feel like today things being mandated is impacting us differently, because our communication is so wildly different.
Mm. But at least according to ChatGPT, I just asked when school is becoming mandatory, did the public fight it? It said yes, when school is becoming mandatory in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Significant public resistance in many areas. Time period. So working class families relied on their children's labor. So you're taking away my labor. Interesting.
Right.
It makes sense in agriculture though. Like that's the whole point of having kids on a farm is that you have more hands to help. Uh, threaten this income. Employers also resisted these laws, especially so child people who like child labor, one way or the other, either it's your kid or someone else's kid, didn't like it. That's what I'm getting out of this economically. Uh, religious groups, especially Catholics in the US, feared public schools promoted Protestant or secular values. They didn't want counter brainwashing for um, their flock. Parochial schools. So that's why they started a bunch of these like Catholic schools to make sure that they still had Catholic values and stuff. Interesting. And immigrant communities saw public education as an attempt to Americanize their children, stripping them of their language, culture, and traditions. which we definitely did to Native Americans and other people, so I can understand that concern. Government overreach, that one tracks for even today. Infringement on parental rights and expansion of government power into private family life. I feel like I've heard those kinds of words used so many times. Distrust of public institutions, state-run schools, skeptical of their quality or intentions. But I mean, that's kind of a valid thing. You should be skeptical of the quality or intentions of uh, a school.
Yep. Yeah, and the only way you should go into a program to learn something is if they tell you to be skeptical of them and they allow you an approach to be skeptical of them.
Right.
If there is no room for conversation, for change, for your own ideas and interpretations, then that is not education. That is propaganda.
Mm.
That's an interesting question. What's the difference between education and propaganda? Would you mind?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So I just want to finish this.
Yeah.
So pushback because not enough infrastructure, not enough schools, teachers, or resources, especially in remote or poor areas. That totally makes sense because I feel like we try and do a lot of things based on like what's in more populated areas and not really thinking how's it going to work in more rural areas. Okay. Massachusetts started it in 1852. So it's really only been what, 170 years-ish, something like that, since the very first one.
Yeah.
US Amish
I don't know.
communities resisted.
Yeah.
Hey, the Amish. I love the Amish. Okay. What is I actually just went to a Mennonite area in Tennessee, and yeah, it was so nice to see everyone like riding around on a horse and buggy and wearing their Amish outfits and having amazing food. Okay, what is the difference between education and propaganda? Intent, method, and openness to critical thinking. Wow, that's an interesting, simple explanation. So
So we're
education,
leaving. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
say what? No, go ahead.
I feel just to clarify, we're kind of leaving the history of education and then we're moving on to a different subject, or do you see this within inside of history?
Uh, well, to be honest, I'm kind of curious because I feel for most of human history, the ruling like group has been whether it's like a monarch or um, a city state like Greece or something. I I feel like whoever was running the show was still operating largely on like the same basic principles. It just went through gossip chains, but it was still essentially what is the decree from the authority, whether it's a religious group like the Vatican or a monarch or whatever, what do they say is the truth? And then everyone else is like either knows it's nonsense or they all just believe a bunch of things. But that still falls under what I would consider kind of like propaganda, right? Because you're not, at that point, you're not really trying to educate per se. You're trying to make people believe what you want.
Yeah, you're feeding people information in order to diminish their critical thinking.
Mm.
Because
And that,
if you were open to critical thinking, if you're open to criticism, um, then that's not propaganda. That would be education. Where like those are like you could think of very racist teachings that were done about slavery in the United States, when slavery, especially like when slavery had just ended, like that's a huge point of conversation about the difference between white and black people. Um, and all of that information was look at how perfectly aligned our studies funnel into this one choice that is something we happen to already believe in. And then
Mm.
if you go outside of that, then now you aren't thinking correctly. And it's only considered to be critical thinking if it agrees with us.
Yeah, only then you're smart.
Yeah, if you ever disagree with somebody, if you ever are in a position where you see things differently, and let's even say you're wrong. Let's say you go outside and you say the sky is green, and you happen to be a certain kind of colorblind, and you just don't know that. Um,
Hmm.
it is still critical thinking to tell people the sky is not blue; it is green. This is a terrible example, but I'm trying to like not think of something highly political. Um, but to the person who says the sky is blue, like if you just say to that person, you're dumb, you don't know what you're talking about. If you say it's anything other than blue, you're wrong. You may be correct, but you're not using critical thinking skills because you're not thinking of the other person's perspective. You're not trying to understand the situation. You're just putting people down.
Yeah. And
That is
also
that is not,
not even
yeah,
also not even questioning your assumptions.
yeah.
Mm. Mm. Okay, so if education is to develop understanding, critical thinking, and the ability to make informed decisions, propaganda is to persuade, manipulate, or control public opinion, often for political, ideological, or commercial purposes. So then the question of is it propaganda or marketing becomes a very fuzzy line.
I don't see the difference.
Yeah.
I think one is corporatized and one is funded through the or is funded and uh, actualized through the government, but they're the same thing.
Mm.
It's like I think World War I and World War II, we used every resource we could, and a part of that was propaganda. And then I think marketing firms came up after that because they learned the power of propaganda to sell things.
Actually, oh, I'm blanking on the book name, but most of what we're calling as like PR and this approach to convincing people like that came after World War II from I want to say it was like Freud's cousin or brother or something. Like literally wrote the book on it. And that's what corporations have been using ever since.
What's the name of this book?
I don't remember. Let's look. Yeah, it's um, oh, it's public relations. It's literally PR. Yeah, nephew of Freud, written in 1945.
Yeah. And then you have these. these ideas, even going and just again talking about
Hey.
American history, going back into when we're trying to encourage people to move out west. You know, very very famous propaganda pictures that you can see of pumpkins the size of carriages or cars, just to show people it's like this land is so ready for farming. You're an idiot for not dropping your entire life and coming out here.
Yeah. So, did you see this? Ironically, this book, Public Relations, was built on his previous two, Crystallizing Public Opinion and Propaganda, was the name of the book.
Wow. Hey, speaking of the art of distracting and coming up with new topics, it is the end of our timer. I think it's been that way for a bit.
Oh, so it is. I need to get like a little bell or something to go off, I think.
I noticed it 2 minutes until it was off, and then I just got soaked into the conversation again. But yeah, I think this would be. I'm happy to do the brain restart and not actually try and draw improv figures, but to draw shapes. But I'm also happy to play a game if you want to try that.
Okay, but I, you know what? So during our test, we tried having ChatGPT give us a game.
Yeah,
So maybe we can try that again and see if it's upgraded since then.
I have already done that,
Oh, and
and it's one of the ideas is show and tell bad information edition. Each person has 30 seconds to find a random object in their room. When you return, you take turns pretending your ridiculous infomercial host trying to sell the object to the other person. The catch is you cannot describe the object by its actual name or intended purpose.
okay. So
How do you feel about that?
I have to sell you
Yeah.
on something, an object
Yeah.
which I can't tell you what it is and I can't tell you what it's for,
Yes.
but you should buy it.
Yeah. So, for instance, have you ever seen these amazing eyeball warmers? Have you ever been cold and have something for your head and your ears and your neck? But what about your eyeballs? Your eyeballs are always cold. It's always the worst. So, what do you use? You get these eyeball warmers right here. And if you're sitting down, you can compress them. But if you're on the go and you can only, you're on the go, you can only do one at a time anyway.
Right, you need
And
the
now
other
this
eye.
eyeball one, at any time, so easy to switch to the other eyeball. You're like the most sophisticated pirate in the world. How have you never gotten this? What are you doing right now? Order it today. It's only 3 payments of $1,999.
Give me your money.com.
Give me your money.gov. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So have you ever had your pants fall down because you lost weight or you just they were too big? Well, here's a fancy belt. You've never seen a belt like this. It's great. It even connects in the wall in case you wanted it to for some reason, just to make sure you're locked in place. It's this nice neutral gray because gray is the good color for you. It goes
Yeah.
with everything. And it's got this nice plasticky feel to it, so soft. It'll just rub you the right way. And, and it even comes with these little twist ties in case you need to attach some, you know, utility belt features like Batman. And when the loop, you can feel like a snorkeler. Ooh, underwater. But that's why you should buy the belt.
I love it. That was great. Well done.
You want my belt?
I have one, but thank you.
Oh, you have one. Okay. I should have asked that
Yeah.
first.
I'm gonna
Oh,
try one more. I'm gonna try and think of it. I picked up something and I kind of regret what I picked up. I just need a second to think what
okay.
this will be. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be inside of the sun and what that would feel like? Now we have the sun synthesizer.
The
And
sun and
anytime you
again.
want, just close your eyes, think about being in the sun. It's not good enough, right? It's all dark. We'll turn on the sun synthesizer, and all of a sudden it feels like you're in extreme visual pain. It's the sun simulator. It's here to simulate what it'd be like to a place you can't go. It's just as uncomfortable as it sounds.
And you too can have it.
You too can know
uh,
what it's like to be in the center of the sun visually.
I feel like that pitch would be great if you were blinding them while pickpocketing them. Try for free. Okay. Speaking of the sun, have you heard of Hemingway? A great person who made this excellent product. But what is it, you ask? Well, sometimes what we need is good posture in our life. Everyone's used to sitting on the computer clickety clackety with the hunchbacks, but no, you walk around with the balancer. Now you learn to balance and walk around and have good posture. The best use of a book by Hemingway that you've ever seen. And if you get too hot from all your balancing acts, you can make it a fan. Two
Wow.
purposes, one price. You choose. Buy now. Done.
And just to let you know, the this fan is like having 200 fans in one, just compressed together, so it's 200 times better. Yes.
200 times better. And there are, in fact, how many? 249 pages of fan. Plus is there a preface? There's probably a prologue, right? Let's go with that. Introductions, plus the introduction.
Yeah, I wish there were camera filters that we could use so we could make our camera black and white and do the like what's the problem section of the infomercial. It was like, do you ever worry about your bad posture? And you click it off and it's like not with the posture positioner. I don't. Okay, all right, I'm done. I'm not gonna. You
The
you did
posture
your pitch
party.
better than me. Yeah, the posture party. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the way. You know, I got this from the Amsterdam airport,
Huh.
but I didn't buy it. They had like a give a book, take a book library.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
so take that, other airports.
Screw you.
You and your flights, your overpriced coffee.
Um,
Um, all right, we hit our 5 minutes. That was fun.
yeah,
Well, why don't we why don't we call that for this session, and then we can
sure.
do like a little feedback and yeah, end with that. So, uh, first, like this is our first session, right? So, especially compared to our test, how did you feel this went?
Um, are we? So how does this currently work? Are we currently live on streaming, or is this being like once we cancel out of this, is this being uploaded anywhere?
I mean, it's already live streamed. It's going to Twitch and
Yeah.
YouTube. I think those two. So
Okay.
on Twitch, they don't really have a very like amazing watch replays kind of function. So most people don't really watch replays. So YouTube, it'll be there. It'll just be live once the video is done, unless I set it up incorrectly.
Yeah. Do you wanna have our recap as a part of the episode?
Well, I figured yes, because I think it's kind of a nice exercise to
Yeah.
continue having the stream, and then people can comment and make it a thing. Like you get to
Okay.
like actively give feedback.
Okay. Because I do have some criticisms. I just wanted to know if we wanted it to be public or not. But I had a lot of fun This was a great conversation. It felt like somewhere in between talking to a good friend, trying to have good conversation, and like studying. Um, and that was great. I don't know how successful it is as a show, to inherently get people's attention. And I think what it felt like for me was two things. One, it was two people learning how to do this new show while just doing it, which is totally fine. And then the other half is it felt more like us recording us preparing to do a show rather than the show itself.
Okay.
Because a lot of this is us typing and looking up information, um, which is not really what a show is. Um, I think we would benefit heavily by two things right off the bat. Is one, having somebody who is attached to the subject matter, because I think that would be great to bounce off of them. And also, before we ask AI anything, we ask ourselves that question out loud first, which
Mm,
we did naturally a lot of the time, but not every time. So,
mm,
like, what's the difference between propaganda and education? I think it's a better example of like, because we're basically two people ignorant in what we're talking about, trying to get better at talking about things and thinking about things, which is like, how do you show examples of critical thinking in a way that is entertaining? And I think that's the nut we're trying to crack.
mm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. There's some points where it probably is a little slow and dragging. Um, but I felt like some amount of that might actually be okay because it feels more real. But some parts I do agree, like it'd be probably better if there was a bit more prep work with like getting some things ready so that or like thinking through some of the stuff a little bit so that
Yeah,
it can just be a bit faster.
yeah,
Um, that or having the questions kind of like ready to copy and paste into the uh, AI,
yeah.
get answers. We also didn't really look at other sources for this yet, so maybe it'd be better to have a little like, for example, I was thinking after our test when we each were looking up on different things and then coming back and talking about what we found, I felt it felt a little disconnected, so I thought looking up together seemed better. And I still feel that way, but I think this needs to be improved somehow for sure. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think what you could do is have another person here, and while you're looking up things and trusting Perplexity or whatever engine we're using, you could have somebody who has a lived experience with this. So having like a first grade teacher there and asking them their opinion. Like, it doesn't have to be somebody who studies education at Yale. It could just be a a person who works in the field, and might have some on the ground perspective, or it could
Mm,
be somebody who is currently studying. And ideally, you would have the rock star version of education scholar, whoever that is, however that exists. But having them take over at times where we need to like look up some answers and look up some references, I think would be helpful.
mm. Or maybe at a minimum, just having like three people, so one person can be typing and the other two can keep the conversation going
Yeah,
nicely.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because it could even be, and then this was, I think a good part of this was us just talking about our own experiences in education, which is really interesting, but not necessarily what the point of this was. In that regard, it felt a little bit more like a podcast than this new thing we're trying to do.
Yeah. But I'm okay with that because in a way it is a podcast. It's a
Okay.
video podcast. So I think some amount of that can be used to open up like different avenues of lines of questions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't get lost into just telling stories back and forth rather than like progressing with the whatever we're looking up.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. So what else? I feel like probably having a like continuing to explore what to do in the break times would be nice. Like I actually enjoyed the doodling part a lot. That was fun. But
I
I don't
enjoyed
know how
that.
great.
I enjoyed that too. I don't know how much it would be great to watch though.
Yeah. I mean, it could also be the way I was kind of approaching it was like if I present it in a nicer way, then whoever's at home can either take a bathroom break or whatever, or and we'll just be like, all right, we're gonna start the timer at 5 minutes. So then they know how much time they have. If they have a pen and paper themselves, they could do the exercise at home
Gotcha.
and see if it works, like test it. Um, or just like sit there and watch us doodle on the screen. So like there's like different
Yeah.
options of how to play it. But
Yeah.
it's also nice because if we do multiple of these like 45-minute sessions, then we can have something different in each one so they can choose like which things they like and want to interact with and which ones they don't.
Yeah.
Mm. I also feel like this will be more entertaining. Like you and I both have this kind of Midwestern background. So that leads to just slightly slower talking, at least definitely on my end. Like I talk a bit slow. So I think someone with a little more pep and energy to like mix in just makes it a more entertaining watch,
I think that's
probably.
a great point. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to see if my friend Ray will join because he's just very entertaining. Mhm. Anything else?
I I think we should have different, like if we're having, I think we should have some kind of intro,
Mm,
and then we need to have an intro where we set up who we are, what we're doing, and any guests, or who are the guests that day. Because I kind of consider like maybe I continue long term. Maybe I'm like, maybe we find somebody who's I like, I'm just keeping everything as a maybe right now for the health of the show. But I think introductions into what the goals are, and then we should also have like a separate timer of like, okay, what question do we want to go now? So let's look into the history of education related to education's purpose, and then let's do that for 5-10 minutes, and let's just look into it and talk about it.
mm,
And then if we want to go past it, that can be fine, but that way we kind of like have some sort of structure, um, to move forward.
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. So I can start each episode with the Notion page, which has the like basic questions we can kind of go through, like where we want to go to next. And then that way it's ready to go ahead of time. And so we have, like you said, an introduction, who are the guests, etc. what are we doing? Which is, in this case, talking about education. And here's all the questions on the Notion page.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe I can even set it up so there's like kind of a quick poll that they can do on like whichever question they want. And then whatever people are voting on, that's the next thing we'll jump into.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds great.
yeah, let's see. Mm, yeah. How did you feel about the aesthetic of this, like the broadcast that's going out?
I love the blue background. I love us in the two squares. I think that's fun. Um, it's pretty standard. It feels like a Zoom meeting.
Mm,
And then I think our backgrounds also like could be better. So I'm gonna change that light bulb. If be ready to change that bulb to change from tungsten to daylight, so I don't look like a pumpkin.
mhm.
Um, and then this is all my fiance stuff back here. So I don't mind any of that being there. There's nothing in there worth, but like I could at least set up the camera to be a little more intentional. Um,
Mm.
and then I think your background will change because we both like you especially move around a lot, but you have a lot of
Yeah,
negative space on the sides.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
that better. Not really. This is a fake
um,
plant, but it looks kind of
it
dead.
looks like you're in the back office of an IKEA store.
This is the leftover IKEA display. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's not really a better place in this apartment, but at least I have natural light, so that's nice.
yeah,
Mm. Um, okay. Well, I feel like I need to make a different like backdrop for this thingy. Because the
yeah.
colors are nice, but it's covering the logo entirely.
It covers the logo, and the logo is kind of like yeah. I feel like it should change as we're like talking about, it. Especially like what do we do when we have three people in this?
Yeah. I mean, I can make new scenes. This software lets me have these like different scenes to change from. So I can flip it around like that and just create one
Yeah.
for like more guests. Um,
And on a technical level, we probably also want to record our videos separate as well.
okay.
So that way we have what you're recording, your separate video and audio, and my separate video and audio. And then that'll help me out for like cutting snippets.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a part of the conversation and then also you switching back and forth between different people and looks. Um, and that'll be kind of impossible to do.
Yeah. So right now it's got these different scenes with like little shortcuts to flip between.
Yeah.
But eh, for the recording, I think that's a setting in here where I can have it record the audio separate, the video separate, or whatever combination. So I'll do that from the next one so that you have.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise it
Mm,
was a lot of fun. I had a great time. It was great to like learn a bunch with you.
this dog is back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any notes from on how I did? Was I on task? Did I sound clear?
no, I mean, you're fine, like from a technical perspective. And I mean, the rest is just us doing this. So I don't think there's anything in particular to do differently. Mm.
Okay.
This feels like one of those things that as we keep doing it, keeping the conversation flowing in a nice way and adding like the appropriate space, like jokes and stuff, will be, it'll just come.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Eric, it was great. Um, I'll yeah, I'll catch you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks everybody, and thanks for joining us. And Tomthinkery, and here's what it's like to be inside the sun. You know.
These are important things to know, what it's like inside the sun.
I
All right.
lay awake at night. Bye.
All right. Bye, Eric. Bye, everyone. Until next time.